Let's talk about process. So this is Design in Process. It's my new YouTube series, and I am going to go through the whole process for designing a product and taking it to market. I'm going to cover everything from market research, ideation, sketching, rendering, design for manufacture, and all that good stuff. And those are all going to be in future episodes of this series. But I am kicking it off today by taking a step back from all of those things and actually talking about design process. Now, it's easy to forget that when you talk about design, you talk about sketching, rendering, modeling, stuff like that. People start to think that that is the design process. You sketch something, you put it in the computer, you press print, and out it comes at 1,000 units, 1,000,000 units, and it's on the market. When you've been in the industry or when you're learning about design at university, you realize that that is not the case at all. You realize that sketching, rendering, all these things aren't the design process, they're symptoms of the design process. And what I mean by that is they are the output that is visible, but they're not actually the design process itself. The design process is the thought process. So if we take a step back and we think about design process in a wider scheme, then we can see that it is the whole journey from start to finish, not just the sketching and the tasks themselves. Now, while I was at university, at Brunel University London, I was taught about human-centered design. And it was taught as gospel. This is how you do design. You think about the people, you put yourself in their scenario, and you do all sorts of different tasks along the way. And this human-centered design is what was taught at Brunel. But now that I've graduated, I realize that human-centered design is from Ideo, a company, a design consultancy that has come up with human-centered design to try and encapsulate their design process and teach it to the world and make sure that they are the market leaders in human-centered design. And the more people they can get to learn about it, the more people know about it, and the more people know to go to Ideo to do that type of design. So it's a great marketing tactic, but it works throughout university because I learned it as the way to do design. There are other companies, like here at Precipice Design, we're a lot smaller than Ideo. We don't have the clout, the industry clout, to start saying what universities should study. But we do meaning-centered design, which I feel takes human-centered design one step further and talks about the emotional connections that we have with the products around us. It's not just about how we use them or can I push this button and press this thing over here, is that comfortable? It's about the emotional connections that we have with those products. So meaning-centered design takes the market and the industry and we map the meanings that we associate. Our motto is people buy meanings, not products, and whenever you see, you actually read that product, gain meaning from it, and you get that relationships with the product and your cultural upbringing as well. That's going to influence. 2 hours later. Now, I'm not here to talk about meaning-centered design because that is a whole new subject in itself. But what I do want to let you know is each company has its own philosophy when it comes to design process. So how can you figure out, if you're not in a company, how to do your own design process and come up with things along the way? Well, if you take a step back from the companies even further, so you're so far removed from the sketches, you've gone to the level of the companies and their methods of design, you can take another step further back even still and find that there are methods of trying to encapsulate all of the different types of design processes in easy to use guides. So the first one that I want to talk about is carried on from the intro scene that I use for this YouTube tutorial. It's by Damien Newman and it's called the Design Squiggle. Now, the idea behind this squiggle is that you've got so many different things going on at the start of a project. You're exploring every avenue that you can. There are no wrong answers. You're just trying to get as much information as possible and as much output as possible. And then as you go through the design process, you start to finalize and iterate and then finalize and iterate until you end up with a smooth transition into manufacturing and pressing print and done. Now, this highlights just how messy the design process is. It highlights that it's not a linear fashion, that you just don't sketch something and then render it and then it's on the market. It shows that there are so many different elements in the design process right up front. Before you even put pen to paper and start sketching solutions, it's just an absolute mess of information and going back and forth and trying to make sense of the world. So that's the design squiggle, and that is what I've based my opening title on because I just think it's a cool sketch anyway. But there is one more aspect that I want to talk about today, and that is the double diamond technique. Now, the double diamond technique, again, was invented to try and encapsulate every single type of design process that you can, and it's a great catch-all solution so that you can map out where you are in the design process and start to figure out what tasks you need to be doing. The double diamond technique was invented by the British Design Council, and it is essentially divergent thinking and then convergent thinking. Divergent thinking and then convergent thinking. And that makes up the two parts of the diamond. Now you can split these two diamonds into 4 sections, and I always forget them. Discover, define, develop, deliver. Those are the 4 sections of the double diamond. Now, the first 2 sections in the first diamond are all about research and world building and getting as much information as you can. That's the first section when you're divergent thinking. You're getting as much data points as you can. And then once you have everything that you possibly need to be able to figure out what the design problem should be, you start to analyze those and you do some convergent thinking and you pinpoint areas and you start to world build in a way that you can fix it. And once you've done that, you get to the center, and only then, halfway through the double diamond process, only then is when you find your design problem. Once you have your problem, then you can design to start to fix it. But until then, you can't start to design anything. So once you have your problem, then you do some more divergent thinking. You just sketch as many things as you can. This is the ideation stage. And it's just no idea is a bad idea. You're just absolutely trying everything, every avenue that you might need to go down in order to have as much data again as possible, so that finally you have the huge design critique and you decide which one or which avenues you should go down. Once you have these routes, then you can come back with your convergent thinking and start to make sure it's manufacturable. And as you go down through the double diamond, each stage will get more and more refined, and it's an iterative process. And then when you finally have the manufacturable item, you're at the very end of the double diamond and you can send it off to the manufacturers and then see it on the shelves in however long it takes. And I think the really interesting thing about the double diamond is just how much it fits within it. And it fits the whole research and business side and ethnography and all of that sort of good stuff that comes before designing, so you know that you have a problem worth solving instead of just coming up with something that no one needs because you did a cool sketch. Now, what the double diamond doesn't take into account is the fact that design is a back and forth process. And that's why I think that it's the design squiggle and the double diamond together that makes the best diagram for a design process. By using the two, you can see that it's really busy and really crazy. With the squiggle, you're going back and forth and rechecking points and going through back on yourself and checking everything over and over and over again to make sure you haven't missed anything. And then as you move forward into the next convergent stage of the diamond, you can see that it starts to make more sense as you go through and it becomes more clear. And that's really the stage when you're just refining the last few details so you can press print and send off to the manufacturers. So what are the tasks that you do along the way in order to do the outputs that I mentioned, like sketching and rendering for the design process? Well, at university, like I mentioned, we use something called Design Kit, and that is another thing from Ideo. Design Kit essentially lists out everything from the human-centered design process, and it gives you specific tasks that you can do in order to get all the research and get all the prototypes made and get the ideation and iteration stages going as well. So I really recommend you guys go and check out the Design Kit. I'll link that down below as well. But whatever you do, don't make that the gospel of the design process. It's just a start, the same way that the design squiggle is and the double diamond is as well. You can obviously go out and do your own research, you can come up with your own tasks to do, but the Design Kit is just a nice starting point to jog your memory and make you realize what goes on behind the scenes. One thing that I really liked to do at university was flipping problems on its head and coming up with how might we questions. So let's say you have a problem and it's about dexterity and you can't use a kitchen tool to cut some carrots. So let's say You've got the problem, which is a negative aspect of the issue, and you want to flip it on your head to turn it into a positive attribute as well. So you might flip that on its head and say something like, how might we design to let everyone cut carrots inclusively, including those with dexterity issues? And once you've asked yourself that question, then you can move forward and try and solve that particular answer. Now, a lot of this will sound really obvious once it's said and done, but it's actually going through that process and saying the obvious things because you might come up with something crazy as a solution that just might work. And you can start to add different problems together and say, how can we solve these cluster? How can we solve this cluster? And then start to find out what is the most important thing to solve, which is always the joke, you know? How many designers does it take to change a light bulb? Well, first we should figure out the core issue. Is it really about the light bulb, or what do we need from light source to begin with? And that's the stereotype that we need to work towards, because without asking those stupid questions, we would just do the same things over and over and over again, because that's just how we've always done them. So we've been through some elements of the design process and taken a step back to give a wider view of the design world as a whole. In the series coming up, I'm going to dive in and go through each step that I would do to take a product to market. And by the end of the project, I hope to have something on the market that you guys can buy. Design in Process is going to be a weekly series, and I need to hold myself accountable to that, and you guys need to hold me accountable as well. Message me on Instagram, comment on YouTube, make sure that I'm filming these because I am so busy that sometimes I forget, and I'm really sorry. So if you want to find out how I do the market research, the user research, the ideation, the sketching, the rendering, the modeling, the design for manufacture, everything. If you want to see how I do this, I'm going to be doing it live, effectively, in front of everyone. Share it with your friends, because that really helps, and it helps them, and it helps you, and it helps me. Everyone benefits if you share this video. And you need to let me know down in the comments below anything in particular that you want to learn about, because then I can use those comments to build the series as I go along and make sure I touch on everything you guys need to know about. And if you learned anything in this video, I would love to hear about it as well. So put that in the comment too, so I know that I'm doing a good job or what I need to improve on in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell button and everything else that YouTube asks you to do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.